is 7 o'clock, so I'd like to call this meeting to order. If the secretary would take the roll, please.
Sure. Bob King.
Here.
Mary Cronin.
Here.
Diane Cervello.
Here.
Carlo Morano.
Here.
Mary Comstock.
Here.
Ed Torian. Here. Swenson. Here. Joan Mead.
Here.
All are present. I appreciate everyone being here. I'd like to suspend the reading of the minutes for a second and call on the mayor, if you would. Mayor Boughton?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to stop by and publicly thank Commissioner Cervello, Diane. We want to thank you for the work that you've done on the commission. I know you're going to miss meeting with everybody, and I know particularly Carlo, and that really tugs at your heartstrings. But those of you who don't know, Diane's moving to Alabama, where she's accepted an appointment to a position down there. And I know I've talked to Richie a little bit, your husband. He also has been working for us at the Senior Center over the years and does an outstanding job. So all the seniors are upset that he's leaving, and we're upset here that you're leaving. And so we wish you the best of luck, and I hope you come back. I know there's been some discussion maybe in the future you can do that, because you've been a wonderful addition to the community. So thank you, Diane, for your service here as well. God bless you and Richie. All the best.
Oh, thank you so much.
And with that, I have for you a key to the city of Danbury to take with you to display on your shelf in your new office. And we didn't even change the locks, although Carlos said I should, but I didn't. So that's for you, and congratulations. God bless you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Door's always open.
Oh, my
And
goodness.
from the commissioners themselves. So we just want to tell you that when we got started, people have told us we have done a great deal of work here. Having never done it before, I don't know whether we did a lot of work or a little work, but it got started because of the research that you had done looking at other charters and how people did it. So especially if you were here at our early meetings, all you know is every time we had a question, we'd say, well, Dan, how do they do that in Waterbury? How do they do it in Stamford? And she always had the answers and things. So you did a great deal of work, and we do appreciate it. And Mayor Boughton, we appreciate you being here for that. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, if we could read the minutes from the last meeting.
The minutes from the last meeting, we accepted at the last meeting on September 8th. We accepted the minutes from August 25th, and the commission heard input from the public. Joel Uri spoke regarding the Planning Commission, and he also spoke in favor of referendums. Al Robinson spoke regarding the city clerk's position and his advocacy that it should be a civil service type position. Mr. Levy spoke and discussed two proposals he submitted for the replacement position to perform the city clerk's duties. Mr. Paul Rotella discussed the two proposals that had been submitted for the city clerk's duties and advocated that the appointment be made by the council alone. He also spoke about changes to Charter Section 6-9, Charter Section 3-4, and spoke in favor that gifts should become, when the city receives gifts, he believed that those should come before the council as it's part of Danbury's tradition. And he also had some questions regarding Section 2-3 of the Charter. Lynn Waller spoke and pointed out that the referendum requirements are very hard, and they make the right to go to referendum not very meaningful, as there's a high percentage of electors that need signatures in a very short period of time. Mary Techhold spoke in favor of the current 21 members on the council. She also spoke very forcefully in favor of a 4-year term for elective offices, as elections are very expensive, and she believes that there'd be greater participation if terms were lengthened, and pointed out that longer terms might help all elective offices with the continuity and greater, I use these words, institutional knowledge of elected officials. The commission then had discussion regarding the city clerk's position and where the duties would go if the position were simply eliminated. The commission then unanimously voted in favor of eliminating the position of city clerk as it's presently constituted. The commission had discussion regarding the replacement position to perform the duties of the city clerk, and then voted 6-1 to eliminate the position of assistant city clerk as it's presently constituted. In favor, Bezade, Comstock, King, Cronin, Mead, and Cervello. Opposed, Swenson. The commission then had discussion and voted unanimously to rename the Personnel Department the Department of Human Resources. The commission had discussion and voted unanimously to change the name of Health and Housing Department to the Health and Services Department. The commission had discussion about changes to the Parks Department and Public Works Department and received a report with proposed language from its counsel, Eric Gottschalk. The commission had discussion about reducing the percentage of electors' signatures required at a referendum and voted 4-3 to leave that section unchanged in favor of making a change to reduce the required percentage to 10% were Commissioners Swenson, Cervello, and King. Opposed, Comstock, Cronin, Meade, and Bezade. The commission had discussion with its counsel about language drafted for sections 6-9 and section 3-4. Those are the minutes from the last one.
Thank you very much. Any corrections or additions to the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes stand as read. We will go into our agenda. First item on the agenda is public discussion. Is there anyone from the public that would like to address the commission tonight? Glenn?
As well.
You may do it from there if you would like.
Okay, thank you. I watched because I'm unable to stay to the end of your meetings, I watched the rest of the commission meeting on TV the other day, and I was saddened by your willingness to open the public speaking portion of the council meeting to out-of-town legal representatives, while shutting down the public from being able to take an ordinance to referendum by not reducing the number of signatures required to force a referendum. I find it deplorable to allow out-of-town lawyers who can monopolize the entire 30 minutes of public speaking on any hot-button issue. Yet, on the other side, you shut out the public by requiring an unrealistic amount of signatures before allowing it to go to referendum. Maybe you just don't want the public to be involved. No one is trying to hold the government hostage. Have you noticed how few voters vote in referendums, especially bonding referendums? Usually it's less than 4,000, which costs the taxpayers a lot of money, yet that's less than the number of signatures you want me to get to require an ordinance to go to a referendum. I think it is wrong. I'd like you to reconsider. I also do not want to see planning and zoning go together, and I know that's on tonight's agenda as well. Thank you very much for doing all that you've done. I'm sure this is our last chance to speak to you publicly, as your work is going to keep you busy. But I appreciate each and every one of you, and I want to thank you for the time you've given the city.
Thank you. Anybody else? Warren?
Would totally be inappropriate. I've been here every meeting, so I must speak now as well. Diane, thank you for your service to the commission as well, and all the commissioners. I'm tired of going to meetings, so I'm glad we're coming near the end of this a little bit and get a rest. I want to speak to a couple of the issues. I know that you've done a lot of good changes within the charter, and I guess it's really a sign of the charter, of the commission doing its work when you like some of it and you don't like other portions of it. The portions that I speak to are planning and zoning for one. I still would say that it's probably appropriate to keep them as separate commissions. That it centralizes too much power in one place, and we've dealt with it all these years. I think we can continue to deal with separate commissions, being planning and zoning. The other thing is the borrowing, section 710, which is the limiting on the old charter has $500,000, and I believe you recommended and approved an increase to the $2.5 million, which I think in keeping with the times, as a matter of fact, I probably would put some kind of escalator in there that would keep pace with, and it would increase over a period of time, maybe CPI or something like that. But at the same time, understanding what our federal government is going through and understanding that for some 30 years or so, we've never tapped the $500,000 more than once in 1 year, I think we should cap that $2.5 million. And I think that it doesn't really tie the hands of the mayor, because in other parts of the charter we get into the 7.5 which is the emergency appropriations, which certainly allow the mayor to, or any administration, to go to the emergency appropriations, unlimited amount of money to address those issues. We always look at things, and every time I've been on the council for some 12 years in total, and how many times they've come before us, various people, and say, we have to have this. We have to have it today. We're running behind. We're going to miss the deadlines. We're going to miss. I'm kind of resilient to that now because, in fact, it really doesn't. We can do things and scrutinize things and take our time and properly address various issues. There's no rush about these particular needing the money immediately. We can carry it into another budget, and if it really is an emergency, we have the charter in place that allows that. So I don't see where we should, but I certainly feel we should cap the $2.5 million because I'm sure somebody can come along and abuse that. And then, we would be in a difficult position. We would be no more than a microcosm of what's happening in the federal government. The other section, of course, and I know that you received the Democratic caucus jointly sent our comments to every one of the members on the commission in reference to the city clerk's position. And I do think it would be offsetting by having the mayor as the appointing individual of that person that would be a staff help for the legislative body, would really offset the balance of power between the executive branch and the legislative branch. Within the charter, there is listing for the mayor to hire his assistant, the mayor's aides, and he has certainly, it would be what we're considering now, or what the commission has so far approved, would be tantamount to the council approving the people that the mayor hires. So I think that, in fact, that we need legislative staff. We need somebody, we're responsible for doing things like reapportionment. Where would we get the help to do reapportionment? I know that I was involved in that. And I think our corporation council can attest to the difficulties that are involved. There was no money appropriated, and it was left in the hands of few. And in those cases, we need to hire staff. We need help in that respect. And we should have on-board staff just to handle the ongoing information that the council has to deal with. And as you know, by the information I submitted previously, the corporation council, that is counsel to this commission, made a ruling that the agenda is the legislative body's agenda, and therefore we need assistance in putting that agenda together, and that's why we need staff help. So that I still think it should be someone that is hired by the Common Council to be a staff for the Common Council, and that by having the mayor, any mayor, appoint that individual, it kind of reverts it back to making it a political position rather than just a staff individual, non-political. And I know the pitfalls of the merit system, but I think I'd rather suffer the pitfalls of the merit system than have it politicized and wind up with the public doesn't get the benefits that they should out of the position. So that I'll still stand by. The other one is the allowing, I guess, the executive branch to make legal settlements without coming to the council for approval. I think that we need that transparency. We need the executive committee, the body, the Common Council, acting in the capacity of the executive board, has not breached that type of honor system as far as letting information out. And I think that we should continue to have some kind of oversight. We do have to appropriate the money that's involved for any legal decisions that are rendered that we would be involved in paying out as far. So it still has to come to us, and we could still refer it to committee. So that I think the idea of having any legal bypassing the council by having that negotiation go on and reaching conclusions without the council's activity involvement in it is kind of, it doesn't seem right to me. It could lend itself to difficulties in the future. I think that was section 3-4, is it?
I thought that was based on the recommendation of the insurance company.
That's 6-4.
6-4?
Yeah.
Legal representation. And I, too, do not support allowing lobbyists, legal representation, to utilize the time that's set aside for the public. I think that public portion of the common council's meeting should be as informal and as relaxing to the general public as possible. And certainly it would be, over a period of time, I'm afraid it would be dominated by legal representation who are experts in selling their position. And people would refer to bringing in legal counsel constantly to bring forward their particular position because legal counsel could do it better than a layperson. But I think I'd rather have a layperson, someone that doesn't know, informally make their opinions. So there again, I think that it ought to be restricted, and I think that the time for the public to make comment actually should be opened up. Either opened up or divided equally among those people who want to present their opinion on agenda items to the council. I think that pretty well covers the areas of concern, and I'd certainly be willing to answer any questions you may have.
Questions or concerns from anyone on the commission? Diane?
Regarding section 6.4, it was my understanding that the only revision we made to the charter was for legal cases that were covered by the insurance, and it was not cases where the city was actually going to pay out. It was cases that were covered by the insurance, and it was just really a paperwork exercise.
We actually don't get involved in insurance settle claims as it is. That's the risk managers. But if you're talking about larger litigation, you may be talking about the landfill, where you would have insurance companies involved as well. And they may be in the order of $4 million, $11 million in one case, where it's a mixture of a number of different elements to the legal case. So the smaller ones, which are 100% covered by insurance, we don't really deal with those now anyway. It's only where it's city money involved.
Rick, those are the ones we changed.
Yeah.
That's the only ones we changed. The insurance.
It's current practice.
Yeah, the language is for settlements that fall within the coverage limits of a policy of insurance issued to the city. So we weren't trying to make it broader than that.
Okay. Is that the limits? That would include things like the landfill, where we had partial payment by the...
With all due respect, Mr. Chairman, because the landfill involved a payment of money, an appropriation from the city, that would have to go to
the council.
And in a case of that magnitude, with that much complexity, typically you would bring that to the common council. Those cases never have 100% insurance coverage. There's deductibles or significant premiums that you have to pay related to.
Yeah, that's what, as I mentioned before, that the appropriation would still have to come back to the council. So we would have to be included. If you're saying that the language is such that
It's just insurance cases.
it's just insurance cases that do not involve, I'm perfectly happy with that.
We think we got that language. We think we got that language right.
Mr. Chairman, just to
Mr.
clarify
Gottschalk.
this, the reason for the change that the commission approved
was just to ensure that the charter language relating to the settlement of claims conformed to current practice. It wasn't intended to change anything. So it's limited to claims that fall within the coverages and limits of insurance. And the problem was that the current language of the charter appears to require that to be approved by the council, and that's never been done. So we just wanted to make it clear, and have the charter be consistent with what current practice is.
There's a language about less paid benefits.
Thank you very much for that.
Chairman,
Thank you.
Question.
Oh, hang on one second, please, Warren.
Mr. Levy, you addressed the borrowing, and you said you should cap, and you keep mentioning the figure of $2.5 million. Did you mean it should be capped at $2.5 million, or there should be a cap?
There should be some control over, I think, an annual expense of maybe $2.5 million.
Okay, but you're not
That being
saying...
the cap. In other words, I would not like to see many times in one
No, I
year.
understand that, but I was just trying to get my head around what, when you kept referring to the 2.5 as being a cap. That's not
Some
what
annual
you're-
cap,
Some
and
cap.
then requiring a referendum.
That's right.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address us? Paul?
Good evening, Charter Commission members. On our last meeting, well, the last regularly scheduled meeting, my dad called me up this afternoon all excited. I saw Carlo Morano's name in the newspaper. I worked with him on the school board for 8 years. Were you on the board with
I
my
was
dad?
indeed, as a matter of fact.
That's what he was all
Guilty
excited
as
about.
charged.
I saw him in the newspaper. He's doing the charter. That's great. Okay, you received our letter that Councilman Levy had alluded to. I'm not really going to cover that ground. I'll touch on it briefly. City Clerk, I was not one of the ones, either now or in the past, pushing for removing that position as an elected office. I would like some independence of that position. And as an elected office, the independence is, that's a pretty high bar. The city clerk, male or female, really only has to answer to the constituents and perhaps the town committee. And that's pretty independent. It might even be maybe a little too independent. I feel that the pendulum has now swung in the other direction with the executive branch actually being in charge of hiring what is essentially the council's legislative clerk. And I feel that we're going from perhaps maybe a little bit too much independence to none at all as far as the council is concerned. I saw, speaking of the paper, I saw something in the paper that said something like the mayor of Danbury presides over the council, and it might seem to the casual reader that the mayor, that a mayor under our charter, a mayor, any mayor of Danbury is like the boss of the council, and really the mayor's duty at the council is important, but it's a duty of moderation in the sense that the mayor's job during a council meeting is to moderate it. You can call it presiding over the council, but that's almost a philosophical construct that doesn't necessarily describe what the job is. He does have an important job, actually, on the council, and that is to break a tie, if he so chooses. That's the one thing that he is empowered to do for the council. So he's not an officer of the council. He's not the boss of the council. He doesn't run the council. He is invited by the council and by the charter to preside over these meetings, again, in terms of moderating it during the portion that we have our regularly scheduled agendas. It's not for public hearings, and it's not for committee of the whole. It's just for that one particular meeting. It's a very important job, and it is a good way to unite these two bodies that are normally in a democracy undergoing some amount of tension, some healthy tension. When you want to maintain a balance of power, you have a strong executive and a strong administrative. And this is a way to get the bodies to talk to each other. But it was not designed to give the council power over the mayor's office or vice versa. So having the mayor appoint our staff, to me, makes about as much sense as having the council appoint the mayor's staff. And I'll leave that at that. As far as the insurance settlements are concerned, often Danbury's insurance policies are almost self-administered. We have a pool for insurance. We don't really have an insurance company. The municipalities themselves pool their resources and sort of self-insure. And you can kind of wind up on the wrong side of that bell curve if you have too many suits, and you know, they have a liaison that comes in and takes a look at what's going on with the city, and the administration can speak to that. But in this particular instance, I'd have to go back over the language, and we could spend a whole other meeting on that. And if what we really need to do is clean up the charter language to make it fit with the precedent that we're already doing, then that's fine. But it would seem to me that allowing the council to have information about these settlements, to give the council an idea of where we are vis-a-vis insurance, lawsuits, and potential settlements is a good idea. And I think that we should continue doing that. If it, however, interferes with the charter or with practices or with this insurance syndicate that we're involved with, then you know, I can back off on that one. But I would hope that the council does have a chance to keep its hand on that. You know, again, with the attorneys being brought in, the out-of-town attorneys, I can only state again that there is nothing in the existing charter language that disallows an advocate to speak for a citizen of Danbury. The way it would work now is the advocate would have to be a citizen of Danbury, a taxpayer or a resident. And any lawyer, any advocate, legal or otherwise, can stand up and say, listen, I got a problem with this, and I'm speaking for my friend Joe here who can't speak English or is mute or couldn't make the meeting, so I'm speaking for myself and speaking for him. And there is, in my mind, if the issue is allowing the disenfranchised a voice, we can do that now under the existing charter. What I'm worried about is an out-of-town attorney coming to Danbury and speaking for out-of-town property owners. I'm also worried about ambiguity in the language. This goes back to a conversation I had with the mayor a year ago when we were beginning the process of starting this commission. And it's the reason that I voted for the commission to be formed in the ad hoc and again at the council, is because I feel there are sections of the charter that are broken. And my issue with I mentioned this to the Charter Revision Commission before, the issues that I have with the charter that are broken are the issues of what I consider to be ambiguities in language. And the commission has not fully explored that. And that might be work for another commission, maybe a battery of lawyers or something like that. But an issue with the Section 6-4, I'm doing this from memory about the attorneys, is that I think the language is legal representative, and it begs the question, how do we define that? Do we ask for a diploma? Did you pass the bar in Connecticut? Are you an Oklahoma attorney? Are you an attorney? Are you a legal representative by fiat? Are you a legal representative because somebody gave you power of attorney? Or this is just something that you say? So let's say I'm that guy and I fly in from Texas because I'm representing a consortium in Dallas that has an interest in some property on the west side of town. They're not here to explain what the definition of legal representative is, but I am, and I start talking, and I raise my hand, and I say, Your Honor, I'd like to speak. I'm a legal representative of XYZ Corporation in Dallas. They own some property here. Do we allow that? If you're going to allow outside attorneys to speak in Danbury, I think you should make the language very specific as to exactly what you're doing with that. Again, I think it's the last paragraph in the letter that speaks about that. Again, this has already been covered in the letter, but let me change the tack a little bit and talk about.
We've got to move it ahead.
Sure. Let me just talk about the things that I'm very pleased with at this point. Keep the term to 2 years. That's very important that the voters in Danbury get a chance to re-elect us or not on a regular basis. No stipends for council people. We get paid enough already, believe me. Term limits, again, that's one of the choices that you're removing from the electorate. They might want to vote for somebody again, but term limits have a tendency of preventing that. Keep that off the table. You've done a good job with that so far. And then finally, the idea of combining planning and zoning. All I can tell you is that if you have some time, go to Ridgefield. No disrespect to Ridgefield. It's a town of 35,000 people. They have a combined planning, zoning, and essentially an EIC. They don't call it that. But they've got these 3 boards that work together, and it's just not going to be workable for a town the size of Danbury. I'm not saying shoot from the hip here. I was on zoning for 6 years, the better part of 6 years. The last couple of months I was taken off to fill a vacancy on the council. But I started my service in Danbury on zoning and did that for 6 years, and I have been to innumerable amounts of planning meetings at EIC, and the skill sets for each one of those things are very different, and the services that are required from those people are very different. Zoning almost is legislative. It maps a general philosophical idea of what is going where in Danbury. Planning is nuts and bolts. It's the height of walls, and it's the the setbacks and things like that. And EIC, if that ever got into the mix, is water runoffs and things. These are very specific.
Hold on a minute, please.
Paul, I'm going to need to cut you off.
Yeah, 60 seconds.
All right. Okay.
Combining 2 or even 3 of these would lead, in my mind, to meetings that went on forever. It would be essentially unworkable. As unworkable, in my mind, is reducing the number of council people to 7 or 5 or 14. The aforementioned problems with making quorums and also with the ad hoc. So I would request that you leave that at 21 also. And again, thanks a lot for all the work that you've put into this. I know that we'll be working together in the next couple of months, but I just want to thank you and Diane. Good luck in the future in Alabama.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address us? Yes.
Any questions? I just have one.
I'm sorry, Paul, 1 second, please.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
We're not setting up, Carlo. I didn't know he was coming.
Mr. Rotella, there
How you
is...
been?
Yeah, I'm good.
Paul,
Hey,
Yeah.
Paul?
you stay there. Just one point I wanted to
For
make.
those who don't know, it's my father.
Hi, Lou. You mentioned something about in the insurance settlement.
Yeah.
There is a requirement within the wording here that a report be furnished to the common council
Yeah.
of all actions. So maybe that satisfies you.
I think it's healthy if the council has a very good idea of what's going on.
Well, that was the intention of putting that in there. So the council will be informed of all decisions. The idea was not to take up a lot of time with things that were more or less routine. And that was the whole point.
I understand.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Someone else that wanted to address us? Yes. I'm sorry, yes.
You just might want to note for the record, this is not the last meeting of the Charter Revision Commission.
Yeah.
It's been said a number of times tonight. I just want the public's watching.
Okay, thank you. The mayor's reminded me that you can come up. I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but come up and tell us your name and where you live. But just for the record, this is not our last meeting. We think we're going to be wrapping up. And we hope to have decisions made on most everything, but we think that we'll be kind of buffing the apple a little more for another couple of weeks. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Hi, I'm Linda Galloway. My address is 231 Thaddeus Avenue in Danbury. You already have my comments regarding my opposition to the increase in bonded spending without a voter referendum, and also the lack of an annual ceiling on such spending. Tonight I'd like to comment on 2 other points. First of all, I also oppose making the position of city clerk an appointed position. To me, this opens the door very clearly to the possibility of increased partisanship and even cronyism. This is an important position, and I feel our city deserves an individual who gets the job based on merit. The second comment I have is also is regarding the proposed change to allow non-Danbury citizens to speak at council meetings during the time currently allotted to public opinion. Right now, only 30 minutes a month is allowed for public opinion, which is pretty astounding in and of itself. To me, Danbury citizens shouldn't have to compete with outside representatives for this small window of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Yes.
I was going to give 2 minutes to Mr. Levy, but then I found out we only have 2 minutes. My name is Margaret Mitchell. I'm the person that's only a taxpayer and not a legal resident of Danbury. I've said before no to combining planning and zoning. I've told you that I'd like to have an established limit per year before the bonding goes to an automatic referendum of the people. I believe that if the mayors have good plans, these referendums will probably always pass. But I really think it's fairest to give the people a chance to say something. I would especially like you to leave the terms at 2 years if you aren't going to put a cap and if you aren't going to lower the requirements for referendums. The people here need some kind of a control mechanism over their government. And if you aren't going to give any other caps or any other control mechanisms, then I'd like you to keep the 2-year term so that we can vote up on confidence, no on no confidence, and have a quicker turnaround, because what's happened at the federal level is just mind-boggling to financial conservatives. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to address the commission? No.
Al Robinson. I think I've been on record about combining planning and zoning. I just want to say again, I do not think it's a good idea to combine the planning and zoning departments. I would love to see a cap put on the amount of bonding before it goes to referendum. 2.5 million. Anything over 2.5 million should go before the public, so the public can have a say so, because it is the public's money. Elected terms, I would like to see that kept at 2 years. As it is now, it gives better accountability to the people. You know, if you're doing a good job or if you're doing a bad job, you give the opportunity for the people to say, if you're doing a good job, they'll re-elect you. If you're not doing a good job, they'll just boot you out. Finally, on the city clerk's position, I think I've been on record several times about the city clerk and why I feel that it should no longer be an elected position. I do think that the city clerk, in terms of who becomes the city clerk, who appoints that position, that should be done by the Common Council. It is a legislative. These people on the Common Council need staff, and it should be up to them to find them a qualified person to hold that position. Giving the mayor that ability seems to be quite confusing. It seems to lead to more problems than anything else. I also do feel strongly that if you make this position a civil service position, you can really weed out a lot of the problems. If a person is hired and they do a bad job, you can remove them or fire them and get somebody else in there, and it would open up to a lot more independence as well. It's one of some of the problems that we have here right now is that if as an elected position, the city clerk can do whatever they want. You're very limited in terms of responsibilities that the city clerk has to do. And let's say the city clerk doesn't want to help you out with something. They don't have to. They're an elected person. They can be there for 2 years. They can basically do whatever they want to do, and they're not held accountable to anybody. And that's some of the problems that we have right now. There's some of the problems we've had in the past, and I've submitted letters to the editor as well as editorials in the past 20 years stating this. So hopefully you guys can come to an agreement on how to handle this problem. But I do hope and pray that we eliminate this position as an elected position. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else want to address us? John?
Mr. Renner?
Yes, please stay right there.
John Mueller, 8 Coach Road. I'd like to speak to you about combining planning and zoning. As someone who's been in planning, filming them, I've seen the applicant get up and speak for hours even before the public even has a chance to address the planning or zoning commission. And at times it has gone beyond 12 o'clock and it's literally shut the public right out. By combining the two, you'll literally eliminate the public from having any hearsay whatsoever. I want to thank you for doing a wonderful job and keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you for filming these, I think.
You're welcome.
Anybody else like to address this? Mayor Bell?
Yeah, when I didn't intend to speak, I just wanted to mention a couple of thoughts while I heard some of the other speakers. The city clerk's position and the appointment that you've crafted in the most recent alliteration of that position is really a reflection of what current practice is. Somebody mentioned, well, we don't appoint the mayor's staff, but that's not really true. If you look under the section under administrative assistant, the council can reject my appointment as administrative assistant or reject an appointment of corporation council or public works. So there's a unique balance of power that goes on here. And I think what you've done, ingeniously so, is required an appointment, but also required confirmation by the Common Council. Then there'll have to be some discussion between the mayor, whoever that may be, in the council in order to fill that position appropriately so that all parties are happy. And so that practice makes the most sense. It also makes the most sense because on a day-to-day basis, it's the mayor that interacts with the city clerk. I mean, that's the items that are on the agenda. Yes, the agenda is created by the clerk, as Rick has opined on, but the net of that, particularly since 2/3 of those items are generated by city government, the net of that is that that interaction that goes on is, does this go on the agenda, doesn't go on the agenda, did it get council approval, does it have planning approval? That interaction goes on with the mayor's office. And finally, one of the things that I discussed early on was the need for some accountability in that office. And that accountability will come through an appointment and a rejection or approval by the Common Council in the sense of the day-to-day operations of the office. So one of the speakers mentioned that, well, they can elect an official in that position, and because there really is no staff, can pretty much do whatever they want. And that's, we've been blessed with good city clerks over the years, but that's the reality. They can, and there's nothing they can do to say, geez, we really need you here, or you can't go on a 6-week vacation, and those kinds of things. And so this provides a level of accountability in the governmental operations that I think works. And I still think that there's plenty of room for autonomy in terms of how that works in relation to the council itself. So I think there was a wise decision by the Charter Revision Commission, or thoughts, and certainly something to be looked at. So I just wanted to mention that to you.
Any other questions? Because I know that this has obviously been before us for some time. Any questions for the mayor? And
I just had one question. Is there the position that we're talking about, the legislative assistant, is more than just a clerical job from the way I see it? And what I want to know is there a mechanism for the council to get extra clerical help when they need it, and whose budget does that come out of?
Well, I'm not sure if the language has changed about hiring additional clerks as needed. Is that still in there, Rick?
Remove. The commission voted to remove that language last time.
What would have to happen then with the LA would have to say, along in concert with the council, we need more help. We could either budget out a contingency for part-time, we could budget in the next cycle for a full-timer, depending on the workload and how much is there. Obviously, what you would do is create one of the challenges we had in the past is we did not have a hierarchy in that office. The arguments that went on over the years was, does the assistant city clerk work for the city clerk? Now, by definition, one would think the assistant city clerk works for the city clerk, but that's been opined in a number of different ways over the year. They know they work for the council, know they work for the clerk. There's actually 2 job descriptions in the job description book. One says reports to the council president, the other says reports to the city clerk. So what an LA would do would create a hierarchy. You'd have your legislative assistant, then you'd have assistants to the assistant, if you will, that would work underneath that person, helping them and assisting them in completing the tasks of the office, or assisting council people with their various tasks as needed. So certainly anybody can put that item on the agenda, or in concert with the mayor's office, there could be a discussion that, hey, we need more help. And allowing budgetary constrictions, we try to meet those requests.
Any other questions on that?
I had a question regarding items as they appear on the agenda, Mr. Mayor. Can any councilman put something on the agenda, and once it's on there, can it be removed?
Yes, any councilman can put an item on the agenda. The council president, he really has control over the agenda. The city items that go on, I remove them or can request that they be removed, and they're removed. We may have some issue that goes on that doesn't need to go to the council. We thought it did. We pull the letter, we withdraw it. An individual council person can put items on the agenda as well. Sometimes if it's a duplicate item or there's another committee, it might be withdrawn at the request of the council president. But generally, yeah, that's the practice, that any person can place something on the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or concerns? Anyone else like to address us? Seeing none, then we will move on with our agenda. First agenda item is we will discuss final language pertaining to the city clerk. Mr. Gottschalk.
I have a handout.
Music to our ears.
I knew it would be.
Oops, sorry. I didn't mean to write on your arm.
This is intended to reflect the votes you took last time, which, as I recall it, ended with a request that I put your views into language. So that's what I've tried to do.
Mr. Chairman? Yes. There's one change that I would suggest that we make in this wording. It reads that 2/3, oh, excuse me, it has changed. Oh, thank you. Got it. Good show. I picked that up earlier this week. Those present was missing before. It just had the entire membership. That's good. I'm fine. Again, Rick, not subject to merit system. That is not a civil service position.
Correct.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, if I read this correct, it states in here that this office is responsible for performing duties that may be offered up by the Common Council, so I think they do have a resource.
Yeah.
I think it covers that.
So everyone had a chance to finish this.
I'm fine.
And if you were here last time, basically what we were trying to do was eliminate the current wording, put it in a way so that
You okay, Joe?
the council could help craft how they wanted that position to work. And our idea was get it out of the charter so that we're not telling the city how this position's going to be manned forever. So we're trying to build in some flexibility. Any questions or comments on what we have here?
Well, I just wanted to make sure that we don't need anything in here that says that if extra help is needed, that it can be hired by the council or whatever.
Do we need enabling
Do we need
language in
that
case
in
you
here?
needed extra staff? Does it need to be in this language?
I think we have a director of public works, and we have 100 public works employees that work underneath them, and I think that the authority always rests within the legislative body to appropriate the money, and the mayor and the administration to recommend that we need additional help, and certainly that can be done in a variety of different ways. You could have a councilman put a letter on the agenda and say, I want to hire an extra person, and appropriate $10,000 out of contingency to do that.
Okay.
Plus, we're saying, aren't we, that we're giving this
You're not limited to
in the
one
hands of
person.
the council and
Right.
making
Right.
what they
Just wanted to
need
make
out of
sure
this.
we
What
didn't
they
need to have that in
They
here.
would be the ones to initiate it.
Yes, and in effect, we're taking the handcuffs off that we don't need a
So
position
they
because
can-
because it exists in the charter. The idea is it would become legislative. If they need
Right.
3 people, they need to propose it and fund it and go do it, but they're not limited by what's in the charter. Any questions or comments? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I have a question.
Paul?
The language was amended, and then maybe I missed it last time, but the prior language was provided, the mayor shall appoint and may remove a legislative clerk. I'm again reading from
Prior language?
prior language.
That's all that's going.
Provided that the appointment may be disapproved is what it originally was, but we were talking about doing, however, that the appointment must be approved by a vote of 2/3 of the entire membership at a meeting not later than 14 days. So the changes, I don't see.
In effect, we gave the council a little more ability. We tweaked it, and the council really has a little more power in this language than in the disapproval language.
Right, but I thought we were going to go must be approved, and I don't see the must be approved language. By affirmative vote, do you think that's the same? Do you think that's operative language that
Shall confirm.
has the, shall confirm?
Shall confirm.
I think it was must be approved was the language that was suggested that was put in here. But I think by an affirmative vote, in effect, says the same thing. I'm not an attorney, but is that getting at your point, Paul?
Yeah, and
Does that say the
was,
same thing?
I think I was looking for the approval language, but shall confirm, I think, is what covers it.
Yeah.
And the elimination of the last sentence, I think, was covered by 6.3, right? 6-3?
Correct.
Right.
The language that we had in the first iteration was unusual language. It appeared in a number of other sections of the charter, dealing, for example, with Public Works or the Director of Finance or the Corporation Counsel or the Assistant to the Mayor, and it described a time period during which the Common Council had to act if they wanted to eliminate this choice. And because you have selected a different approach, we didn't need any of that special language.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Can we get a motion?
Diane?
Go to work.
I make a motion to accept the language as written and handed out to us today.
Okay, which would be subsection 2-2AD, including the language in the sections noted at the bottom?
Yes.
Okay, a motion's been made.
And
Second.
3-3.
Did I, and 3-, thank you. Motion's been made that we accept this language as is. A second? Dr.
Second.
Cronin?
No, fine.
Discussion. Any more discussion regarding this language? If not, then I will try your minds. All in favor of this, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay. The next item on the agenda, we will further discuss and vote on the following key charter items. The need for an annual bonding trigger.
You have the options.
Okay. You know, a good chairman has great people that do lots of work for them. So here's some documents. Mr. King went back through history and said, well, here's what we've looked at. Just so that you'll know where we are. One more. Joan, can I get one of those back, please? We are not limited by any of this other than to say, here's where we were when we first started looking at this. And you know what we've done is we've changed the language where we went from $500,000 to $2.5 million. The mayor had a recommendation where it would be 10% of the total budget. The director of finance thought that some percentage of the taxable grand list was an option. If you remember Mr. King's recommendation that we did it as a percentage of the city's total net assets. The public and commission input that we received was make it simple, put a dollar limit on it a year, anything above that, that's something everyone can understand. And the final thing was keep the trigger point at $2.5 million or keep it at $2.5 million per project and a fixed dollar amount per year. We are open to any and everything or to nothing. So before we start discussion, does anyone want to make a motion that we look at the bonding cap for the year? And do you have a specific recommendation that you'd like to make?
Mr. Chairman, I think it might be appropriate to discuss the merits of each thing before we put a motion together. And maybe we can just take it from 1 through 5.
Okay, then we won't have to amend any motions if we made a specific motion. How do we feel about bonding caps? We've had this discussion before. Can I hear both opinions?
I feel there needs to be a cap. I think that we have been advised by the mayor in a meeting that he would like the commission to consider a cap, a reasonable cap that would allow him to manage the city finances, but provide sufficient confidence in that it would require a referendum before going over a certain dollar amount or a certain percentage,
okay,
whatever the case may be. And he pretty much left it up to the commission what the cap ought to be, but he did make some earlier recommendations about, some potential ideas.
Any other comments, Peter?
Well, we've really kicked this one around a long time, and I think everybody sort of knows my basic feeling is we elect people to represent us, including the mayor and the council, and throughout Danbury's history, as to this particular issue, as to bonding, we've been very well represented to a point where, unlike the federal government and other levels of government, they've probably not spent enough to maintain certain city assets. I like the flexibility of trusting my elected officials, who I elect every 2 years, to make these tough calls. It's worked in the past, and that's my bottom line feeling. But if the issue is that this isn't going to pass the council, if we don't have some kind of cap, then I might consider it. But there was no cap before, and it went for many, many years not being abused. I don't have any reason to expect that it'll ever be abused going forward in the future. I don't think it's ever been abused. And I trust the elected officials, and if I don't trust them, in 2 years I'll have my chance to vote them out of office.
Okay. This is interrelated to length of terms of office, to referendum percentages, to the referendum thing. So we're trying to tie up all these loose ends. How does everyone else feel about that?
Mr. Chairman, I feel this is a hold hostage situation when you put it in that context, Mr. Gazade. I feel that it should stand on its own merits, not be linked to a length of term. Certainly that's a check and balance. If we're not going to have some sort of cap, we certainly would want some check and balance. But I think that's tantamount to closing the barn door after the horses ran away. I think you have to have some parameters on the borrowing, as I've stated all along. There are a lot of different measures you can use. The one thing that I kept hearing out of this commission was, let's keep it simple. And it could be as simple as taking item 5, item B under 5, and that's to keep the flexibility which you so desire, and rightfully so. And I think the $2.5 million per project basis does give him flexibility. It does give a mayor flexibility. Also, when taken in context with the emergency provision, in case there is an emergency, we have resolved that matter. So this is the normal business type of thing. And I certainly agree with Commissioner Bezade about the need for keeping the infrastructure and the city assets in good working order. But I don't believe there's anything wrong, as the conversation he and I had earlier, with having some sort of trigger point where the mayor has to go sell his project or her project to the public for that. So I would ask the commissioner to reconsider that it is appropriate to have a cap, and it's something that is not overly restrictive.
Anybody else? Diane?
I think that everybody's comfortable with the $2.5 million now. And looking at this list where we've been before, if we look at the basis as a percent of the net taxable grand list, couldn't we just set an annual cap, like based upon what $2.5 million? That way we'd have an escalator clause in there if we adopted that whatever percentage 2.5 million is of the current grand list, and set the percentage at that. That way we would have a way to escalate it as the city grows and the grand list grows, and we feel comfortable increasing it that way, and leave it at $2.5 million annual, or whatever percentage that is annual. It would be simple, and it wouldn't overburden it, because I think that everyone is comfortable with $2.5 million now.
Well, Peter's saying that he doesn't feel there needs to be any limit. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to interject here, with all due respect. My second recommendation there was just because we were talking about it so much, so I just threw out another. That's all that represented. That was 10%. The only thing about Commissioner Cervilla's recommendation, I might say, there are years when it's possible to have a negative grand list growth. It's very possible. And Milford just had one this year. So the question then, would that come off the 2.5 million, or is that a floor? You might want to just, if you decide to go that route, make sure you incorporate the possibility that you could have a negative grant list for the next fiscal year.
In the discussion, I kind of like the idea that I come up with based on... This is no surprise, folks.
You like your idea, huh?
Mr. Mayor, why are you leaving?
Maybe he doesn't like your idea.
I kind of get that. Thank you for your support, sir.
Whatever you guys come up with, I'll find it.
Thank you. All right.
Okay, Bob, you like your idea.
Yeah. What I was trying to get at with this was that if you look at the financial statements of the city, there is a phrase in here. It says, over time, the increases or decreases in net assets may serve as an indicator of whether the financial position of the city is improving or deteriorating. To me, that speaks of affordability. That net assets, for those familiar, is called equity in a corporation. This is nothing more than total assets minus total liabilities. That's what the city's worth. And that will increase as the assets increase, or if liabilities increase, the net assets will decrease. So it does provide a measure of affordability by applying a percentage to that, and that's a publicized number at the end of each fiscal year. It's a fairly simple calculation. It makes sense in that it addresses both the assets and the liability side of the city. And to me, it's simple. That may be something worth considering. The percentage, whatever you want it to be.
What do you think?
Net assets is about $160 million.
Dr. Cronin?
Well, he said simple, and I don't know if that's simple to me. I mean, I'm maybe just not understanding the simplistic part of that.
I think people would have to go look at a number and do
So we
the...
would have to look at and follow it down.
Well, I think it would be
piece
the
by piece
number,
to see what-
Mary, I think it would be the number that the Director of Finance would have to inform the Common Council as to what the figure would be when they go on before a bonding. I think as in any cap, he would have to do that. You know, the...
Hold on 1 minute.
So, oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So, for example, of the $160 million, which was based on, not this past fiscal year, year before, if you put 5% in there, we're looking at roughly $8 million as a cap. And anything over $8 million, it would have to go to referendum. Anything over, any project over $2.5 million would have to go to referendum. So you have a two-tiered trigger point. And that's what I think we were
I
trying
think
to
people
get
would
at.
be concerned, like, how firm is that number? Can it be massaged where suddenly that number can go up because it's an accounting number?
I don't think it can be massaged in the certified financial statements of the city. It's not in a budget that I would base it on.
Any other comments or questions? Diane?
I just feel that's too abstract. You know, people want to read the charter and see what the maximum number is, and I think the public wants it to be simple so they can understand it.
The simplest thing is to put a fixed number in there then. And the problem with a fixed number is that it is fixed, and it is not subject to inflation. If you add an inflation factor to it, it again becomes somewhat ambiguous. Because then what is the right inflation number to use? I mean, somebody could mess with that as well.
Any other comments?
We could add the CPI to it.
We're not doing...
But talking about your proposal, you're coming up with a much higher figure than what I think we were intending to start with.
You can lower the percentage, come up with whatever figure you want. I used 5% of 160 million. You could use 3, 2, 1, whatever you think is appropriate. But the percentage of the grand list, piece is also a small percentage of a very huge number. And I think a lot of the commissioners was troubled by that proposal when the Director of Finance made that suggestion.
Can I ask a question of the commission? Do we want a cap? Let's, do we,
I would be in favor of a cap if we're moving to the 4-year terms. If we're not, then I'm not. So it's something that I'm going to tie into what we're talking about.
that's why we've been a cat chasing our tail,
Yes.
quite frankly.
Yes, we need to talk about both of them.
But let's go through that. Who else feels like they want a cap? And then, Diane, you would want a cap.
Sure.
Okay. So do we want to make a motion that we do want a cap, and then we will then, or, because I don't want to presume that a majority of us wants a cap unless a majority wants a cap, in which case then we'll say, what do we want that cap to look like? Do we want it to be a set number? Do we want it to be a formula? Do we want to build in escalators? Because we can make it as complex or as simple as we want. Am I on the right page that most commissioners would like a cap?
Take a vote.
Well, should we decide first if we want to go to a 4-year term?
Do you want to table this discussion and go talk about 4-year terms before we do that? Would that help? Would that bring clarity to this?
Before I vote on
Okay, there's no motion on the floor. Please help me with Robert's rules. There's no motion on the floor, so we can table this discussion and to start discussing the length of terms that is on our agenda, which is 3B on the agenda. If that'll help us bring some clarity to this. The idea was that we would extend the lengths of terms for elected officers other than the school board from 2 years to 4 years. Any discussion around that? Mary, would you like to start us?
I think that a lot of people came to us and said that it was very expensive to run an election, how costly that it was. And that was
Okay.
good point.
Dr. Cronin?
I would prefer a 4-year term if I were, if you ask my opinion. I think a 4-year term, partly because of the fact that it's very, very expensive, but the other part is that 4 years gives the community a chance to really have the communication that you need. Because many times we have a hard time getting people out to vote, number one. And number two, if they had an opportunity to know who the people are that are running and know a little bit about them and get to know, what they've done in the past, what they can possibly do for us, I think we have a better option of getting people out to vote. And you're right, it's very expensive, it's time-consuming, and I bet if you asked all the council people, they just get in there and they figure out what they're going to do, and I know this just from my teaching staff. They come in and you just whappo, they're shifted to another school. And then they have another whole thing to get acclimated to. So I think for a management piece and a piece of understanding and knowing the community, the 4-year term is more beneficial. And yes, it is very expensive.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
I would like to see a 4-year term because I think leaving it at 2 years has a tendency to trivialize the position. I think if you make it a longer term, it lends more importance and weight to the position.
More investment.
Okay. Ed, you were a councilman, yes?
Yeah.
2-year terms?
Yeah. And I personally would like to see a two-year term be retained.
Okay. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, I'm a chicken and the egg on the flip side of what Commissioner Comstock said. I cannot support either a higher referendum number or a no cap bonding if we go to a 4-year term. I think there's checks and
Come on, you guys.
That if we're going to enable somebody to stay in office for 4 years, we certainly, I think, need to put some controls around that office in terms of the bonding and perhaps, as we've heard from some of the public, lower the referendum.
But that's not the only thing they do. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
That's not the only thing they do for 4 years.
No. I said there's a lot of...
Why are we basing all that around there? So in part of the way, I almost kind of agree with, maybe we should have said it. One is kind of different from the other, kind of be separated. I could see them being together, but I could see them being separate entities. Bonding could be one thing, and 4-year terms could be totally something different than we're discussing. I see them both on their own. Okay? And I still think the 4-year term is better.
I think there's a lot of advantages to that.
And I don't necessarily mean you have to tie it to the bonding.
Does someone want
for that.
to make a motion?
On what?
No? You can make a motion on anything you want. Right now, we're talking
You want to go back to your plan?
we're talking 4-year terms. And just to give you a little perspective, this wouldn't happen until 2011, maybe? Is that?
It's not going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, okay. I see a
I'll
hand.
make a motion
Okay.
that we extend the length of terms to 4-year terms for all elective positions other than the school board, which, however,
Okay.
that works
And the way
out.
this, and Mary, a second, a motion's been made and seconded that we take the mayor's, well, we take all positions other than the school board and change them from 2-year terms to 4-year terms. So a motion's been made and seconded. Discussion.
Well, we did this once before, and we're going to do it again. And I spoke in favor of a 2-year term. And for all those very same reasons, I'm still in favor of a 2-year term.
A 2-year term.
Okay. I am very mindful that elections are difficult. I'm also mindful that voter participation is way down. And I think that Danbury, in particular, has not been well served by a vigilant press that might have been envisioned by our founding fathers. I like the 2-year term. It gives us a chance to right something that goes wrong. But this is an entire whole document, and Bob, I just don't like that word hostage. This is a document that works, all its parts work together. It's inevitable that that's true. So I'm glad we're talking about terms and bonds and other things all together, because it does change our perspective. If the commission votes for a 4-year term, there's a lot of good reasons to do that. Okay? I've weighed each of them. I think there's a high learning curve to all these different jobs that these people perform, the mayor and the council and all the elected officials. It's just that what makes me uncomfortable about it is just the lack of vigilance by the public and the lack of vigilance by the press. So I'm sticking to the 2-year term for those reasons. But if this commission votes for a 4-year term, I can understand it, and I'll support it when it goes in front of the council.
And for the record, one of the things we did look at was, is there some kind of recall provision we could put in should someone in office get in trouble, and we know that we cannot do that. So, okay.
But I understand, and I agree with Peter about the two pieces, about the vigilant piece and getting the community involved. But just because we changed the number, I'm not sure that's going to change the involvement. There may be something else the city has to do, and we as citizens have to do, to change that other part of the vigilance and getting involved. Because I don't think changing the number really makes that other piece, come to fruition.
That's the next charter revision. We'll deal with the other.
Yeah, okay. Don't call me.
Okay, other questions, or anybody want to make a point on 2-year versus 4-year terms? Paul, do you?
No, I think we've hashed this out.
You think we've gone far enough? I'll try your minds. Seeing no other discussion? Okay, I'm going to ask you to raise your hands. All in favor of changing from 2-year terms to 4-year terms for elected offices other than the school board, raise your hand if you're in favor of 4-year terms. 1, 2, 3, 4. Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, which means the chairman is the tiebreaker. I vote in favor of raising it to 4-year terms, so the motion passes. And Mr. Gottschalk has a little more work to do.
Happy to do it.
Another handout.
So it'll be another handout at the next last meeting. Okay, having done that, do we want to go back to the bonding trigger?
Bobby wants
Pun.
Okay. Is there
I've said it all I intend to say about bonding.
Okay. Just to keep this party moving, does anybody want to make a motion on
We're
bonding?
going back to bonding.
Yes, we're back on bonding.
Okay.
With or without a cap, are we going back to that piece, or?
Right.
Almost.
I'm assuming that we're looking for some way of doing a cap. Do we, am I reading?
Yep.
Most of us, okay, we're talking about a cap. Do we want a set dollar amount? Do we want to do it as a percentage, and then we'll look at which percentage? And if someone would just make a motion, we can work our way around that.
I'll make a motion that we set a cap of $2.5 million annually.
For non-referendum bonding?
Right.
Okay.
Okay, a motion's been made. Is there a second? Mary Comstock seconds. A motion's been made and seconded that we add the language. Can someone tell me what charter section we're in?
710.
Yeah, I was going to say, I should know that one by heart, right? So the 710, that language would be added to 7-10, Section A, I'm assuming, that any bonding above $2.5 million would have to go to a referendum.
Per fiscal year, I think.
Per fiscal year.
Is that right?
Discussion about that. Discussion about that.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. King.
While I appreciate the attempt to put a cap on here, I think that is rather restrictive from what has to be done. We've, in the past, seen that high-priority projects are delayed and pushed to outer years. You know, and I have to agree with my colleague, Mr. Bezade, surprise, that it is rather restrictive. And I think there are other options that the Commission should consider.
And what would those options be?
Should we discuss that now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, because we can amend this.
Okay.
We've got a motion at 2.5.
What I do like is the per project amount. And I think maybe if we consider item on the schedule that was handed out, B, yes, here, B, where we retain the 2.5 and we put in a fixed dollar amount cap. And we did make a change in the charter saying that the charter must be reviewed at least every 10 years. So I think there is flexibility and that this can be updated on an ongoing basis. The fixed dollar amount for the purpose here, I would suggest $5 million.
Okay, that would require an amendment to the current motion, because the current motion is that we have an annual cap of $2.5 million. Diane, you were going to say something?
I just wanted to comment on Commissioner King's comments. I think that we already voted on language to allow the capital projects to get submitted to the council earlier so that any bonds could be deliberated upon earlier in the process, and any projects that were being neglected due to not being funded will have the opportunity to get reviewed and funded earlier in the process. So I really think that making it per project, I don't agree with it, because I think that if there are going to be projects that are going to be funded, they will be reviewed earlier in the process, and if bonds have to be issued, they should go to referendum at that point. And it should really be $2.5 million per year, or per fiscal year. That's really the position that I
Okay, so that would be, we've already done the language for $2.5 million, and now that would make it an annual cap, which is in effect agreeing with Mrs. Mead's, I'd like to call her Joan, with your motion. Other comments?
I think we've already also put in the emergency, so that if something did come up that was an emergency situation, the mayor would have the authority at that point to go to the council, and if it was an extreme emergency, it could be done without having to go to referendum also.
Okay.
Are we also saying that it's a $2.5 million per project cap and also the fixed dollar amount per fiscal year? I mean, that's the same number.
In effect, that the motion right now is that we have one bond at $2.5 million. Anything above that is non-emergency would have to go to the voters. I think I stated that properly.
No, I think you anything in excess of $2.5 million within a fiscal year would have to go to a referendum.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
I like Commissioner King's proposal. I think there should be a $5 million.
You are an anarchist. Go ahead, Pete, throw that Molotov. I'm sorry.
I think that the $5 million cap per year would allow the mayor and the council to take care of projects that they may need to bond. And I think the reason why that flexibility is important is, yes, there's an emergency provision. We reworked the language for that. But that orderly bonding, I mean, if you can go for the bonding the first time around, you're going to save on the financing costs. And that's an oversight on our part. So that gives them a little bit more flexibility to do what needs to be done. And there is some kind of a cap. I mean, if we're going for a 4-year term, there should be an annual cap. And I think $5 million is a good enough amount. And why I base that is it appears that $2.5 million is the going rate for those small little bridges that seem to fall apart around town. I think that just gives our city and its elected officials some flexibility.
Okay, would you like to make that in the form of an amendment to the motion?
I'd like to second, yes, that's the amendment to the Jones motion.
Okay, so Mr. King made a motion that we make the annual cap $5 million, that per project piece would be $2.5 million.
That's correct, no more than that.
And that's an amendment?
Would you go
Joan,
for a percentage of net assets?
Stop that, you. You're out of order. Joan, you had a question?
No, you just...
Okay, so now we're voting on the amendment, which is to amend Mrs. Mead's motion so that we would have a $5 million annual cap. Anything above $5 million a year would have to go to the public. The per project maximum is $2.5 million. So if you vote yes on the amendment, it then replaces your motion, then we will then vote on your motion. So all in favor of the amendment, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
There are 2 nay votes. Okay, have you got, okay. So that now becomes the motion. So there's a motion on the floor that we change this bonding again, a $5 million annual, a fiscal year cap, and a $2.5 million cap per project. Any discussion about that? Then I will try your minds and ask that you raise your hands. All in favor, vote by raising your hand. Cronin, Torian, Comstock, Buzade, and King. All opposed? Mead, Swenson, and Cervello. The motion passes. Mr. Gottschalk.
Congratulations, Peter.
A little more.
Diane?
It took us
Can you give
11
him a
months,
rose?
but you guys...
11 months.
11 months, and you guys agreed on something. Okay,
Well-
next on our agenda. Good. Recommendation to combine Planning and Zoning Commission.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. King.
I am troubled by this. I know it was voted at the time when I was absent. The only way that I could support combining this, based on all the input that we've heard, is if the new combined commission would consist of both an appointed portion and an elected portion. The appointed portion would serve as the continuity and selection process. The elected portion would speak for itself. As we've discussed, sometimes it's very difficult to fill those positions during an election. And I think an office is important to this. We have to have some continuity in there and some consistency. So barring that possibility, I cannot support it, and I would vote not to combine it.
Okay. Any other points of view or questions? Do we need to get more information about this? This has come up once before.
And it was voted down once.
It was voted down, yes.
Do we need to reissue our positions on that?
We don't need to. If someone wants to make a motion about combining them, I'm happy to.
Oh, yeah, I'll make a motion to combine them. For all the reasons I spoke about before, I think that the present system has been gamed by many people, having 2 different bodies, and there's been a lot of hodgepodge development because of the 2 separate bodies. I think that that having one one body responsible for these changes. It holds them accountable, and I think it should be an elected position so that if they foul up, they're voted out of office and they're held accountable. Right now, there's two separate bodies that are not necessarily doing the same thing, and I would prefer a combined planning and zoning commission.
Okay. Mary?
I would agree to a combined planning and zoning, but I think what people are afraid of is less of an opportunity to become aware of a project and be able to voice concerns against a project. So how would we, how people feel? You know, people think that by keeping them separate, it's just one more chance to go and object and to find out. So how would you make people comfortable combining them if they thought that it was just a manner in which to keep them out? That's what people I talk to think it is. It's just a manner to keep us out.
But this has the same number of public hearings.
I understand. That's people's perception. People's perception is you're just combining it and giving us less of a chance to get in there. What could we do to overcome that? Could we put anything in the wording or anything to overcome that? Because I think it should be combined as well, because I agree that, you know, the development around town that has not served us.
Dr. Cronin?
I remember when we first started talking about this, that the biggest issue, technically I agree, I think they should be together. And I know a lot of people are talking about, you know, this has this job description for this group, and this group has another job description, and we'll be in meetings till midnight if we put them together. I think all that could be replanned and reformatted. I think when we first talked, we talked about the fact that things were not being done the way we thought were most productive for the city because it was not the right communication between the two groups. So if we can accomplish getting the right communication and working together, you know, toward, say, one goal or one project, would make more sense. If we, my only fear is to keep them the way they are, and we're widening the gap of communication. I mean, how are they going to change? If we separate them, what is the mechanism that's going to make them communicate better? And so that everybody knows what each of those groups are doing. So if we can't get it unless we combine them, then I think we should combine them. Or at least get a semblance of communication.
Any other comments? If I can put down my gavel, my biggest concern with combining is it seems that I keep hearing that zoning kind of gives away the store, that they hear a hard luck story about someone's property. They're the elected people, and they kind of want to be nice to everyone that shows up at the meeting, so they kind of change the rules, and they foul up the master plan of the city. And I keep thinking, if we make it all elected, how are we changing that? At least the planning people are appointed, and if we make it all elected, I know what it's like for the parties to fill the bottoms of those tickets. And I'm not so sure we're ever going to know that someone's done a bad job on zoning, because most people don't even know who their council members are. So how are we fixing it by making one board, by concentrating the power in one board and making it completely elected with really no appointed oversight? How are we making it more professional if they're just people that are running for office? And I don't know the answer. I'm concerned.
Do they all have to be elected?
And well, we could do a half appointed and half elected board.
Election from both commissions, so to speak, and then some appointed from both.
Can that be done legally?
I haven't taken a poll of communities to see whether or not there's anybody that follows such a model. All I know is that the provisions of 7191, or it could be 193, give you flexibility when it comes to crafting a method for for commissions such as these. So, you know, I haven't done any work on it since the last time we had this conversation, and it was at that time that you elected not to go forward with a proposal to combine, and so no work was done. But if you are inclined to combine planning and zoning and select a method of filling the positions that combines both elected and appointed members, I think it would be worth a look. I haven't done it yet.
Do you see if there's an interest in that proposal?
What do we think? Are we,
I think it's worth another handout.
is my sense that we want to revisit this
I
then?
think it's something we
Let's
should.
put it on the agenda for the next meeting then.
And as what?
Is combining and give us the options. Can it be part
Appointed, part
appointed, part elected? And we have to decide, do we want it all appointed, all elected, combination of the two? And do we want to go in that direction? So, no decision on that tonight. Number 4 on the agenda, we will conduct